The fog rolled thick across the road like pale smoke, swirling in slow spirals around the rusted sign that read, "Welcome to Daggers Hollow, POP 471. As the car's headlights pierced the mist, Elise Harper felt an uneasy twist in her stomach. The town felt forgotten, like something not meant to be disturbed. She had never heard of Daggers Hollow until the letter arrived, thick parchment, wax-sealed, no return address. It read, "Elise. Your grandmother has passed. Her house is now yours. Come alone. Do not whistle after dark." That was it. No name, no signature. Yet something compelled her to come. The streets were nearly empty, lined with sagging houses and crooked lamp posts that blinked weakly against the encroaching dark. The people she passed didn't wave. Some watched from windows. Others simply turned their backs. She parked beside a tall, rotting Victorian house at the edge of town. Ivy choked its porch, and black birds perched motionless on the gables, as if sculpted there. Inside, the air was heavy with mold, and the scent of dried lavender, her grandmother's favorite. Portraits lined the walls. All featured the same gaunt, stern woman, Elise's grandmother, eyes clouded with something unreadable. But one portrait was different. It was not a painting but a photograph. Black and white. Slightly crooked on the wall. It showed a tall, long-limbed figure in the woods, its face stretched in an impossible grin, eyes black pits, teeth like broken glass, far too many for a human mouth. Elise stared at it, unable to look away. Something about it felt wrong. Not old, not historic. Recent. A sticky note was pressed to the bottom. Do not remove. Do not look too long. It remembers. Elise backed away and turned, but something shifted in the room behind her. A creak. The photo had fallen to the floor. The glass cracked straight down the figure's face, splitting that impossible smile. She stared at it again. Just for a second. That night, Elise lay on her grandmother's old bed. The wind outside whispered through the trees like it was saying something just out of reach. Her phone had no signal, no Wi-Fi. The town was a dead zone. At 1:11 a.m., a low whistle echoed outside. She sat up. Her heart thudded. Another whistle. Closer. She pulled the curtains aside. The street was empty. Then she saw it. At the edge of the forest that bordered the house, just beyond the first row of trees, something stood. A shape too tall, impossibly thin. It leaned slightly, its head crooked. Elise couldn't make out a face, but she could feel it smiling. She could feel it looking. The whistle came again, long and warbling, like air forced through splintered teeth. She stepped away from the window. The sound stopped. Something thumped on the porch. She crept down the stairs, each step creaking underfoot, and stood behind the front door, her breath held. No one knocked. But she could hear breathing. A slow, rasping inhale. Then a sound like dry laughter. The porch boards creaked. Then silence. She stayed there for what felt like an hour. Eventually, she opened the door. Nothing. Just the empty street, the fog, and the woods, thick, dark, pulsing with something that waited. Elise turned back, but something caught her eye. A deep gouge was carved into the wood of the door. 4 words. Now it sees you. She locked every door and window. But she knew locks didn't matter. In the kitchen, she found her grandmother's journal. Most of the pages were torn out, but one entry remained. It comes for the curious. It grins because it knows. Never whistle. Never look too long. Never let it smile at you. Once it sees you, it follows. Not fast. But always. You'll hear the whistle first. Then the teeth. It doesn't stop. It never stops. Elise turned the page. Just a single sentence, scratched in red ink. I whistled. The air shifted around her, growing colder. And then, from the hallway behind her, a soft sound, like someone breathing through their teeth. No voice. Just presence. She turned around. Nothing there. Yet every instinct screamed she wasn't alone. She fled upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. Outside the window, the woods were silent. But in that silence, she heard something deeper. Movement. Something dragging itself forward, slow, steady, patient. That night, she dreamed of the photograph. But in the dream, the figure wasn't in the woods. It was inside the house. At the foot of her bed. Grinning. Elise awoke with a jolt, drenched in cold sweat. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the smell of damp wood and lavender grounded her, the house, the photo, the thing in the woods. The dream still clung to her. That grin. That feeling of something watching. But it wasn't just a dream, she knew it. It had been in the hallway last night. She felt it. Outside, dawn had broken, casting a gray, colorless light over Daggers Hollow. The streets remained deserted. A dog barked somewhere far off, but then quickly silenced. Downstairs, Elise found the photograph once again lying face down on the floor. Its cracked glass hadn't been replaced. The smile on the figure's face, wide, jagged, inhuman, seemed deeper now, like it had changed overnight. The longer she looked, the more it felt like the grin was meant only for her. She taped a towel over it. In the kitchen, the journal still lay open. She flipped through the remaining scraps of pages. One stuck to her hand. A torn corner with a sentence scribbled hastily across it. The woods keep the secret. But it leaks out. Something scratched lightly at the back door. Not a knock. A scratch. Like fingernails, or claws. She backed away. A shadow passed the frosted glass. Not tall. Small. Crawling. Elise grabbed a knife from the counter. The scratching stopped. When she finally dared to open the door, nothing was there, except a trail of wet footprints. Bare, long-toed, and inhuman. They led off the porch, and into the woods. She should have called someone. Left town. But the phone lines were dead, and there was something in her, something irrational and heavy, that said you can't leave now. Like the house wouldn't let her. She needed answers. With a hoodie zipped tight and a flashlight in hand, Elise followed the prints into the trees. The woods were silent. Too silent. Even the birds had gone. The trees towered, their limbs gnarled like clutching fingers. Moss hung like rotting skin. As she went deeper, the fog thickened, clinging to her like breath on skin. Her steps crunched on damp leaves, but the sound felt muffled, swallowed by something. Then she heard it again. A whistle. Not from in front of her, but behind. She spun around. Nothing. She picked up her pace. Snap. A twig cracked in the distance. Another whistle. Closer now. And then, laughter. Not loud. Not right. It sounded like something trying to remember how to laugh. As if it once was human, but the memory had decayed. She ran. Branches clawed her arms. The fog twisted into shapes that looked like hands reaching. The whistle followed her, moving through the trees like it didn't care about obstacles, like it glided. Then she found it. An old cabin, hidden in a grove of skeletal trees. The door hung open, rotting. A sign above it read, barely legible. Forestry Watch Post, 1907. Inside, the air was heavy with mildew and something else, something metallic. Dried blood stained the walls in streaks. Notes were nailed to the boards, hundreds of them, overlapping and yellowed with age. They all said the same phrase, over and over. Don't smile back. In the corner of the room, someone had carved a message into the wall. You can't stop it. You can only delay it. It grins because it knows when. And it knows your name. Elise turned to leave, and stopped cold. Standing in the doorway was a shape. Too tall. Its limbs dangled like they were disconnected from joints, as if its bones had been strung up by a puppeteer with no skill. It leaned forward, its face shadowed, but that grin, that horrific, stretching grin, full of sharp, uneven teeth, she saw it clearly. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Elise backed into the cabin. The grin widened. And then, it whistled. The air around her grew thick. Her chest tightened. Her legs refused to work. The flashlight dimmed, flickering. Something inside her recognized it. Not from memory, but instinct. Like a primal fear buried so deep it bypassed thought. Then the thing stepped back, into the fog, and vanished. Gone. No footsteps. No sound. Only the silence, and that grin lingering behind her eyes. When she finally got back to the house, the door was wide open. Inside, the living room was different. Every photo had been turned toward the wall. Every mirror had been shattered. And on the wall, above the fireplace, something had been scrawled in black ash. You saw it. Now it smiles for you. That night, Elise didn't sleep. She sat in the corner of her room with the lights on and the knife clutched tight in her hand. Every now and then, she heard movement outside. Creaks. Drags. And once, just once, a giggle. A child's giggle. But she knew better. The grinning thing wasn't a child. It only sounded like one. The night passed in fits of terror and half-sleep. Elise jolted awake each time her head dropped, haunted by phantom whispers and the memory of that twisted grin. Morning came, but it brought no safety, only silence, and a thick, gray sky that looked like it had been smeared with ash. The house felt colder now. Not temperature cold, dead cold. Like something had been drained from it. Or replaced. She didn't speak aloud anymore. Not even to herself. It felt like if she made a sound, it would hear her. She avoided mirrors. Every reflection looked wrong. Slower. Like it moved a half-second late, with a grin just waiting to bloom. The message on the wall remained, you saw it. Now it smiles for you. It hadn't faded. In fact, it looked fresher. Downstairs, she found the basement door open. She was certain she hadn't touched it. It had been locked tight when she arrived. Now it stood yawning like a mouth. A foul stench seeped up from below. Mold, rot, and something else. Something sweet and wrong, like syrup poured over rotting meat. Elise stood at the top of the stairs, holding her breath. Then she heard it. A soft, wet clicking sound. Not mechanical, organic. Like something chewing. Against all reason, she descended. The light bulb overhead flickered as she stepped down. Her hand trailed along the wall, each step creaking under her weight. The deeper she went, the louder the clicking became. Then it stopped. Dead silence. The basement was large, but half of it was hidden by a row of old wooden shelves and a dusty curtain nailed up as a divider. The smell was strongest behind it. She pushed the curtain aside. And found a hole. A gaping, jagged hole in the concrete floor, surrounded by dirt and torn wooden boards. It hadn't been dug, it looked like it had burst upward, like something had clawed its way out. Or in. Dozens of long, gray teeth, actual teeth, lined the edge of the hole, embedded in the earth like the mouth of a buried creature. They were human-sized, but not human. Too many. Too sharp. Too old. She staggered back, choking on bile. Something whistled from deep below. Elise fled up the stairs, slamming the door and throwing the bolt shut. She pressed her back against it, her heartbeat in her throat. The house groaned. Not from wind. Not from age. It groaned like something shifting its weight. Something massive. That night, she dreamt she was in the basement again, but the teeth were moving, grinding against each other, chattering like laughter. The hole widened, and from its depths came a long, pale arm, with fingers too many and too long, each ending in ragged nails and twitching with eagerness. It reached for her, and just before it touched her face, she woke to scratching beneath the floorboards. Not in the walls. Not outside. Beneath. She grabbed the flashlight and followed the sound to the hallway. It stopped. Then started again, directly under her feet. Elise dropped to her knees and pressed her ear to the floor. At first, nothing. Then. Tap. Tap. Scrape. And then. Elise. It knew her name. She scrambled back, her breath ragged. That was when the boards began to bend, subtle at first, then like something was pushing up from underneath. A hairline crack split down the center of the hall, oozing dark liquid. It wasn't blood. It was thicker. Blacker. It smelled like burnt sugar and decay. From the crack, teeth began to emerge. Small ones at first, like a child's. Then longer, older, yellowed. A grotesque smile forming in the very wood. She screamed. And the house smiled back. By morning, the crack had sealed. The teeth were gone. But her hands were stained with black residue, and her arms were scratched like she'd been in a fight. She checked her reflection. There were faint bruises around her neck. That day, Elise began hearing laughter from the walls. Not constant. Just enough to break her. Low, childlike giggles mixed with something deeper. A mimicry. Like something pretending to be human. Mocking the very idea of sanity. She found more messages. Carved under tables. Written on the inside of drawers. It smiled at my son. He was gone in 2 days. Grins open doors that should stay closed. Don't let it smile through you. That one made her stomach drop. She ran to the bathroom and stared into the mirror. She wasn't smiling. But her reflection was. Just a twitch. Barely there. But real. She smashed the mirror with her fist. Blood ran down her knuckles. That night, she boarded the windows. Every single one. She unplugged every electronic. Removed every photo. Every face. Every image of eyes. Then, from upstairs. Laughter. A thump. Then another. Heavy footsteps walking across her bedroom floor. She was alone. Or she had been. She crept up the stairs, gripping the flashlight in one hand and the knife in the other. The hallway was dark. At the end, her bedroom door stood open. Inside, something sat on her bed. Its back was to her. Tall. Thin. Its limbs were too long, and its spine curved like it had been stitched together wrong. It tilted its head. A sickening crack echoed through the hall. Then it slowly turned. Not all the way. Just enough. So Elise could see the edge of its face. And the smile. Elise slammed the door and locked it, heart jackhammering in her chest. Whatever that thing was, whatever had grinned at her from the bed, it hadn't moved. It didn't need to. The grin alone had done enough. A grotesque crescent of slick, yellow teeth in a face that wore her features like a stretched mask. She didn't sleep. She sat in the kitchen clutching the knife, eyes locked on the hallway, waiting for the door to creak, the whisper to come back, the thing to move. But nothing happened. Until 3:07 a.m. A single knock. Then another. Then the voice. "Let me in, Elise. It's cold." It sounded like her. Exactly like her. Down to the fearful tremble. "Let me in. I'm scared." But Elise was sitting in the kitchen. The voice came from outside. She rose slowly, legs shaking, and crept to the window. Carefully, she peeled away a slat from the boarded frame to peer out. Her breath caught. It was her. Standing in the yard. Wearing her hoodie. Same face. Same tired, terrified eyes. But the smile. It bloomed slowly across its face like a disease. Lips stretching wider than any humans should. Eyes never blinking. Never moving. It smiled until its cheeks split and dark fluid ran down both sides of its chin. Then it waved. And said again, "Let me in." She backed away from the window. The voice followed. Everywhere she went in the house, it came through the walls, the floors, even from under the sink. "Let me in, Elise. It's so dark out here. I'm you, remember?" Then came the scratching. In the attic. In the vents. Under the bed. Like nails. Too many nails. She tried to drown it out with music, but every time she turned on her phone, the same photo appeared, her face, but smiling, with those impossibly wide teeth and pitch-black gums. No eyes. Just endless, grinning holes. By the fourth day, the smell returned, sickly sweet and burning, and her skin started to itch. Red lines traced down her arms in patterns she didn't understand. They weren't scratches. They were smile marks. Drawn by invisible claws. She couldn't remember the last time she ate. Couldn't remember what day it was. But she remembered the dream. In it, she stood in the bathroom, looking at her reflection. Only this time, the glass didn't show her, it showed the other one. The grinning one. It smiled and said, "You're almost ready. Almost hollow enough." When she woke, her mouth was bleeding. She had bitten through her own tongue. And now the house itself began to change. Walls warped. Doors shifted. The floor near the basement pulsed like skin, and the boards bulged as if something breathed beneath them. When she tried to leave, the front door wasn't a door anymore, it was a wall. No hinges. No knob. Just wallpaper stretched over where it used to be. She was trapped. With herself. And with it. The next night, Elise found a note pinned to her bedroom door with a jagged tooth. The note was written in her own handwriting. "It wears you easier if you stop fighting. Let it in." That night, she heard it walking again, bare feet slapping the wood, slow and rhythmic. She hid in the closet, knees drawn up, knife clutched in trembling hands. It stopped right outside the door. Breathing. Then. It began to speak. But not with words. With laughter. Layered, choking, wet and grating, like a choir of children trying to laugh through broken teeth. Then. "We were never meant to smile like this, Elise." The door didn't open. It didn't need to. A single eye peeked through the slats of the closet, its eye. Her eye. The same color. The same shape. And then the grin appeared just beneath it, pressed against the wood, stretching and twitching. It whispered, "You're almost gone now. Just a little more." She blacked out. When Elise awoke, she was lying on the floor of the basement. The boards above her had vanished. The teeth ring around the pit were larger now, longer, slicker, and pulsating with life. The hole was breathing. She tried to move, but her limbs felt detached, like her body was only loosely held together. Something stirred in the pit. A shape. A tall figure, its arms like ropes of meat, its neck too long, its face. Her face. But not quite. It was grinning too wide now. The mouth had torn through the cheeks, all the way to the ears. Its smile had become a maw. Its tongue coiled like a parasite. It whispered, "The more you fear me, the more you become me." And then it stepped back into the pit, dragging its nails against the wall. Elise crawled away, weeping, half blind. Back upstairs, the house greeted her like a tumor. Its walls smiled now, small, twitching mouths embedded in the wallpaper, each one whispering in her voice. "Soon, Elise. Soon." She covered every mirror. But every reflection now smiled, even when she didn't. Especially when she didn't. The house was no longer just a place to live. It was a predator. Each morning, Elise woke with less of herself left inside. Not physically, her body was still hers, but something inside had hollowed out, like a dark pit growing behind her ribs. It was a slow, gnawing emptiness, a sickness that tasted like despair and silence. She stopped trying to speak. Words came out wrong or didn't come at all. The voice in her head, the grinning thing's voice, filled every silent moment. Hollow, hollow, hollow. It was a chant, a rhythm, a pulling force. One night, the walls began to pulse like living skin. She pressed her palm to the wallpaper, and it rippled beneath her fingers. The mouths hidden there, tiny, wet, hungry mouths, whispered in her ear. "Feed us. Feed me." Elise's breath hitched. Feed it? How? What? She didn't have the strength to scream anymore. The hunger inside her wasn't for food, it was for something darker. In the mirror, her reflection flickered. The grinning face looked back at her. No, through her. It mouthed the words without sound. "Empty yourself. Let me in." Her own mouth moved, slow and heavy. "I'm sorry." The voice in her head laughed. A wet, ragged sound that made her bones ache. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time lost meaning. Elise found herself in the basement again, drawn like a moth to the hole lined with those terrible teeth. The pit no longer breathed. It throbbed. She stared into the darkness and felt something staring back, waiting. Her skin prickled. A voice whispered from the shadows. "Feed me." Suddenly, something cold and slimy brushed her ankle. She jerked back, heart hammering. The floor beneath her cracked, and a hand shot out, a pale, skeletal hand, clawing. "Help me," a faint voice hissed. But it wasn't her own. It was fractured, broken. Elise stepped back, but the hand grabbed her foot. Cold fingers wrapped around her ankle like iron chains. She pulled hard, breaking free, and stumbled back into the light. The basement door slammed shut. Her breathing ragged, Elise knew the hunger was no longer just inside her. It was outside too. Something was coming. Something that wore her face. Something that had torn through the earth beneath her home and waited beneath the floorboards. That night, the laughter was louder. It echoed through the vents, the walls, the pipes. "Feed me." The scratches on her arms deepened, forming a twisted smile. She looked down. The marks were bleeding. But the blood wasn't red, it was black, thick, and shimmering. Her nails turned brittle. Her vision blurred. Her reflection grinned wider. Elise collapsed. And dreamed. In her dream, she was swallowed by darkness. Inside, thousands of teeth clattered, chewing endlessly. Whispers sang all around her. Become the grin. Become the hollow. Become the hunger. She tried to scream but no sound came out. Then, she felt a cold breath on her neck. A voice whispered. "You are ready." Elise woke with a start. The house was silent. Too silent. She rose, trembling, and looked into the hallway mirror. Her eyes were black holes. Her smile stretched impossibly wide. She touched her face, cold, slick. She was changing. No longer fully herself. No longer fully human. The hunger was inside her now, consuming every part of her soul. She was becoming the grin. Elise's body was no longer her own. Each morning, the reflection staring back from the cracked bathroom mirror twisted a little more into the thing she feared becoming. The grin had spread, a grotesque scar of flesh splitting wide, the teeth sharp and uneven as if carved by some mad sculptor. Her eyes had darkened to endless voids, empty wells that sucked in all light and hope. The hunger was no longer just inside her, it was everywhere. It seeped into the air, clung to her skin, and gnawed at her mind like a relentless parasite. The house pulsed with a sick vitality, its walls breathing with hidden mouths that whispered and begged, dragging her closer to a fate she could neither fight nor escape. Desperation clawed at her last fragile sanity. She knew what she had to do. Elise forced herself to stand. Her legs trembled violently, but she moved toward the basement door, the gateway to the pit where the grinning thing waited. The door resisted, no longer a simple barrier but a living thing itself. It groaned and warped beneath her trembling hands. As she pushed it open, a blast of cold air hit her like a punch, filled with the scent of rot and death. Below, the pit yawned wider than before, a black maw that seemed to breathe and hunger. The teeth lining its edges dripped with dark saliva, and the shadows inside writhed with shapes too horrible to name. The thing was there. Waiting. It stepped forward, revealing a form both human and monstrously wrong. Its face was hers, but twisted beyond recognition, skin peeled back, muscles exposed, eyes molten and glowing with malice. Its grin split its face from ear to ear, teeth clicking together with a wet, sickening sound. "You came back," it hissed, voice like scraping metal. "We are ready now." Elise's heart shattered. "You're not me," she whispered. "Oh, but I am," it said, reaching out with clawed hands. Elise stumbled backward, falling against the cold stone wall. The thing's grin widened, and suddenly, the house itself seemed to roar. The walls convulsed, the floors buckled, and the air filled with a deafening cacophony of screams and laughter. "You can't run from this hollow. It will break you," the thing whispered, stepping closer. The pit's darkness reached out like tentacles, wrapping around Elise's legs, pulling her toward the abyss. She screamed, fighting with every ounce of strength left. "Feed me, become the grin." The voices rose in a horrible chorus as the pit yawned wider, ready to swallow her whole. But Elise clenched her fists and forced her eyes open, finding a shard of determination buried deep within the terror. "I'm not done yet," she said, voice cracking. With a surge of desperate power, she kicked and clawed free, scrambling up the stairs, the house shaking as if in rage. She burst into the living room, panting, heart racing. The shadows twisted, eyes glowing everywhere, whispering, "You belong below." But Elise refused. She ran to the boarded-up front door, pounding on the thick wood, screaming for help. No one came. No one ever did. Then the walls began to bleed, dark, oily liquid seeping through cracks, pooling at her feet like a spreading nightmare. She fell to her knees, sobbing. The grin was inside her now, consuming everything. But in the depths of her mind, a spark still flickered. The fight wasn't over. Elise's breath came in ragged gasps, her knees pressed into the slick, blackened floor. The house groaned around her, alive and furious, as if sensing its prey slipping away. The darkness crawled closer, a tide of shadow licking her skin, cold and suffocating. Her eyes, those endless voids, flickered with the last flicker of resistance left in her soul. The grin that split her face stretched wider, deeper, painful, unnatural. It was the house's mark, the curse she could not escape. The voices in her head surged to a crescendo, a dreadful symphony of whispers and laughter, all urging her to surrender. "Smile, give in, join us." But Elise refused. She closed her eyes, summoning the fragments of herself, the parts untouched by the hollow's cruel hunger. Memories of sunlight on her skin, a gentle laugh, the warmth of a hand held in love. Those fleeting echoes gave her strength. She opened her eyes, and saw the thing standing before her. Not the grinning monster from the basement, but something worse. It wore her skin like a mask, a perfect copy of her face, but with eyes that burned like embers and a smile carved from madness. "Why do you fight?" it whispered, voice dripping with malice. "Because I'm still here," Elise said, voice trembling but firm. "Because you're a lie. I'm real." The thing laughed, a terrible sound that shook the very walls. "Real? You're hollow now. You've fed me, and I have fed on you." Suddenly, the house shuddered violently. The ceiling cracked, revealing a swirling black void that pulled the light away, sucking the air from the room. Elise felt the last threads of her strength unraveling, the hunger clawing at her heart. But then, from the depths of the void, a faint light appeared, a soft glow that grew brighter with each breath she took. It was hope. Or something like it. Elise rose shakily, stepping toward the light. The grinning thing screamed, a horrible, guttural sound. As the walls began to crumble, the shadows retreating with each step she took. The fake face of herself snarled, trying to block her path, but Elise pushed forward. The light wrapped around her like a shield, burning away the darkness that had consumed her. With a final, agonized scream, the grinning thing dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind silence and the faint scent of ash. Elise collapsed, tears streaming down her hollowed cheeks. She was free. But the grin never truly left. Sometimes, in the darkest moments, when the night is silent and the shadows press close, she feels it, a twitch at the corner of her lips, a whisper just beyond hearing. The house waits. The hollow hungers. And the grin. The grin never dies.